Hi, I'm Suzanne Ellingham and I'm the director for Source Fashion, and these are some very special on-site podcasts for Honest Not Perfect. And today I'm joined by Kresse Wesling of Elvis Kresse, and she just has a fantastic story. So I'm going to get curious and learn a little bit more about the Elvis Kresse journey, but also just talk about some of the challenges of building a business that is ethically minded, that has its values, and that now has won some fairly large awards this year. Yeah. So congratulations.
Thank you.
But Kresse, can you tell me a little bit about the journey into where Elvis Kresse came from?
Sure. I met Elvis in Hong Kong, and I was working first in a small VC, and then I started my first business there. And Elvis was working for a British company which moved him back to the UK, and I couldn't live without him, so I quickly found my way here. And I've always been interested in waste. So when I first arrived, I went to see the sewers, I went to see landfill sites.
See the sewers?
Yeah, the Victorian sewers that are under London, yeah. Landfill sites, waste transfer stations, material recovery facilities. It turns out that if you are Canadian and you wear a backpack and have a ponytail, people will let you in everywhere. You know, I probably could have gotten the nuclear codes or something if I'd been that.
GCHQ, be worried.
Exactly. Canadians, we're stealth. We're seriously stealth. Our friendliness is our cover. But I went to see all these things that I was interested in, and I was really shocked to discover that actually there is no national waste strategy. There wasn't then, there isn't now. 100 million tons were going to landfill. Nobody knew what that 100 million tons consisted of other than 3 baskets, 30% construction, 30% household, 30% commercial.
Okay.
And how do you develop a strategy on the back of that? How do you solve problems on the back of that? You need information. Ellen MacArthur was still sailing, so nobody was talking about a circular economy. But I started with problems. I hunted down problems, and then we worked backwards from that. And actually, Elvis and I always call what we do in then and now backwards design, because we don't sit with a sketchbook and decide this is what we're going to make. We find a material problem, and then we think, what is the next best possible life for this material? What is the ultimate good that can be created from this molecule? And how do we realize that? How do we deliver that? How do we make it exciting? How do we make it engaging? And how do we keep it pure? That's really all that we do.
And which was, firstly, I find it really distressing that there's no national waste strategy in the UK, because I know there are organisations like the CIWM who are trying to tackle that. And why do you think that is? We'll delve into Elvis Kresse in a second, but I'm just curious because I know that the local councils are quite devolved and all do their own thing. Do you think it's because there is this local authority mindset that they just care about their own problem and not necessarily how big that problem is and how collaboration could help solve it?
I don't think it's that at all, but it is the structural problem. So the fact that it's devolved to the councils means that the councils and they all sign their own 25-year contracts with a waste management company, means that it's virtually impossible for them to join up.
Yeah.
And we've created a structural nightmare that we need to row back from and actually say nationally, if we're going to have polymers at all, there should be 3 polymers. No other polymers are allowed. If we're going to have textiles, these should be the textiles we're allowed. No other textiles are allowed. And I know that sounds almost draconian, but given where microfibers are, given that we have no way of getting them back, given that 98% of people in the supply chain of clothing are not paid a living wage, I think that it would behoove us at this point to start legislating to solve these problems. It takes some courage. And I'm just waiting for that wonderful,
waiting for some courage.
Yes. I think more people in government need to watch The Wizard of Oz. And
I think
be the lion.
I'm going to be just as controversial as you. I think some people in government need to start thinking about how we start solving problems now and not in the next 4 years because they're worried about the next election.
Yes.
Some of the challenges that we have are going to be going on for longer than an election cycle.
Yes.
So let's start building a great groundwork that other people can build on.
Yes.
You know, it has to start somewhere. And I think the level or the lack of environmental legislation that the UK has had, both in terms of a lack of a circularity, any kind of legislation coming through from Europe that we collaborate with outside of the EPR, And outside, I can't really think of any other environmental or waste regulation that the UK has passed in the last few years.
No.
I could be being really harsh, but I can't.
No,
It's not on my
I mean,
mind.
I Theresa May got rid of, 5 years down the line, cotton buds and plastic straws. I mean, it's all very surface. EPR, extended producer responsibility, if you're from the uninitiated crowds, is really, really wonderful if it is enacted in full to the best that it could be. But even EPR is still scratching the surface because it doesn't distinguish between glass and plastic in terms of ultimate good. It doesn't deliver when we're talking about things like cigarette butts. It doesn't deliver when we're thinking about fast fashion.
Yeah.
And the materials that are being imported to the country that we have no way of dealing with, so we export that waste and make it someone else's problem. We need help.
And I think there needs to be, people say, when will that change come? I personally think until there is a legislative change, nothing's going to move forward quickly. I think that has to be unfortunately, a stick rather than a carrot. Anyway, back to you. So how did you end up moving in the direction that you did? So obviously you're in this journey of reverse engineering?
Yeah, you could say that. Yes. Or reimagineering or something like that.
I love it. Reimagine. Let's go Disney. Only slightly more wholesome.
Yeah.
What led you into fashion? Was it a matter of just thinking, actually, this would make a really good material that can be used to this? And then discovering there wasn't necessarily somewhere to go from there?
It was the material that took us there. The first material that we fell in love with was decommissioned fire hoses. Fire hoses can survive 25 years. That's their health and safety life. Then they get decommissioned, or a catastrophic tear means that day one, a fire hose might get decommissioned. And we followed that material. What can it do? What should it do? What's the best possible future for this molecule? That same idea. And all the research that we did led us down the route of belts, bags, and wallets.
Yeah.
Because we knew that material had been deployed in that industry. And actually, I got then very excited because the more I discovered about luxury at that point, the more I realized that was the luxury is a structural failure. It represents a structural failure. It's an industry that makes money but fails people and fails the planet. And to me, if you fail people and you fail the planet, you fail.
Yeah. Was it LVMH who said that luxury is sustainable by design? Was that I think that was the famous quote, and his point of view was that they were very expensive products, so they were made from quality, but reality is there's huge profit margins in the luxury sector.
Yes. Some things that are made by luxury businesses are of that quality and do have that longevity, but not everything. Some things that are made by companies of my size and at my price point are made that way almost exclusively. And we have this promise to repair, and a belt, if you buy a belt from me and you grow, I'll grow it with you and I will shrink it with you. That's our promise with a belt. And you wouldn't necessarily get that from a luxury business. They would want to sell you another belt. So for me, you can't just make a statement about that and link price to sustainability. That's not true. You have to think through your entire supply chain, all the material choices you've made, all of the employment choices you've made, every single person that's involved in every aspect of what you do. And if you haven't thought that through, then I'm not sure how you're justifying the high price point anyway. But yeah, I think we do need to. Everything, fashion is too cheap. Most of it is way too cheap. It's being subsidized by someone else somewhere else, by the landscape, by people who are being exploited. And that all needs to end. We have modern slavery legislation in the UK, which means that a lot of the goods that are being imported here actually should be stopped at the border and not allowed in.
We could have a conversation this for hours because...
And wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah, well, I think one of the most disturbing things for me was last year, and it was the minimum wage in Cambodia. They tried to increase it to $10. So by that I mean, I think they were trying to increase it to $238 a month for a worker.
Okay.
That's somebody working 6 days a week in a factory.
Yeah.
And they couldn't pass it because companies wouldn't pay extra for the workers to have that level. And then you start thinking, actually, the amount of fashion that is made in Cambodia versus the living wage that they need in order to have a day off or to actually have education. And then you think, actually, what company couldn't afford that? Like, the profit margins coming out of fashion from that region in general means that really we're just profiting off somebody else working 6 days a week and very long hours. It's such
If a company can't afford that, it's not a company.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget, I read this many, many years ago, and it was about Walmart, and I'm calling it out because it's not my research. This amazing anthropologist in the US studied the lives of people who worked for Walmart, and he discovered that the vast majority of them were on some form of state aid, whether that be Medicaid or food stamps. And then you look at Walmart and go, is that a successful business, or is it a state-sponsored enterprise? This is fascinating to me.
Interesting conversation.
And these companies that say we can't afford to pay better wages, well, then maybe your business should close down, and someone with more ingenuity or creativity should fill the space that you've left behind. Because the quality of the workmanship is incredible. If you're not prepared to pay for it, then you're not a business.
Not a sustainable business in a good way. And I always think it goes back to the roots of the purpose of business, is that traditionally it would be to provide employment. And yes, you can make profit, but not at such a level where somebody is being exploited somewhere in your supply chain so that you can give a return to a shareholder. I feel I could talk about this for a very long time, but I feel
it's just common sense.
Yeah, I think
if there's exploitation in your supply chain, then you're not making money. You're profit. You're exploiting people.
And for me, one of the biggest problems, my personal view, is that we talk about consumers and why they generally won't pay more for fashion. I think we've lost touch with how human fashion is. 98% of it is still people and machines.
Yeah.
If you know that all of your fashion is handmade, because it's made on a machine, unless you're looking at athleisure or you're looking at something that's really technical, it's made by probably a woman on a machine somewhere in Asia. And the reality is that when you know that, shouldn't you question why your piece of clothing only costs like £1.50 or £2? Like, it makes you rethink. And I think I feel that consumers have generally lost touch with just how handmade and how human fashion is.
Yes.
It's one of the things that show we're going to be producing content around it, is actually let's rehumanize fashion.
Yes.
Like, this is all made by people.
Yeah.
And people deserve to be paid a living wage, and they deserve to be paid for the quality of what they do.
If you used to, I think it was something, go back 50 years, we used to spend a lot more money on our clothing, and in terms of our basket of goods, like our life expenses, and we used to spend a lot more money on food. Both of those things are artificially cheap. And I run an accessories business, a luxury accessories business, and I also run a farm. And I know what the labor requirements for a farm are. And they're enormous. They're absolutely enormous. And it's 7 days a week. And if something happens in the middle of the night, it happens in the middle of the night. It's not, it's 9 to 5, I can't do that.
No, you're getting out of bed to sort it out.
And at the average, I read somewhere that the average British farmer is paid something like £14,000 a year. Wait, these are the people who are growing your food.
Yeah.
What quality do you think that food is if this is the budget you give them? What quality do you think their life is? Do you think that's sustainable? Do you think their children are going to go into farming? Do you think there's a future for food? I would like to just have tons of money go to education so that we could have the critical thinking to allow us to make better choices.
Completely agree. I think dairy farming is one campaign that I've been following, and there's a great account, and I will link to it in the podcast. And it's an organisation, they go into supermarkets and they show actually this dairy product, it's only got dairy, it's been replaced with palm oil, which means the farmers aren't getting paid for this, but people still think it's dairy. So I think farming is such an underpaid industry, especially within the UK. And again, it's because things have just become artificially cheap. And I think people need to understand actually the real cost. It may not be to them, but it's a real cost to somebody else that's being exploited, because things just aren't that cheap anymore.
No.
So anyway, so back to the accessories business. So you obviously started the partnership with London Fire Brigade. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came about? Was it a curiosity in the material, and then how that developed?
No, it was so I was in this phase of having arrived in London, going to all these waste sites, really being very curious about things, and I signed up to do this environmental course, and there was 2 guys there from the London Fire Brigade.
Wow.
And the environmental course was really dry. It was not very interesting. It was all about, I mean, it's very important work, because it's all about record keeping, understanding, data, where do things come from, where were they generated, by whom. All of that is incredibly important, but it was dry. And the guys from the LFB were really interesting. And I said, why are you here? Are you wasting too much water saving our lives? And they thought that was really funny. And I said, actually, we've got some real problems. And we've got this fire hose that cannot be recycled. We've got these old Victorian buildings that we're in that are very leaky and very difficult to heat. We've got all these things that we want to do better. And we're here for a grounding and an education so that we can tackle those things. And I said, this fire hose stuff, let me try to get to understand it. Let me come and see it. And when I saw it, I fell in love with it. It is so beautiful. And it is so beautiful. And it is so obviously durable.
Yeah.
And it was meant to prevail. And the idea of it going to landfill was just too devastating to me, too disappointing, and unworthy of the material and unworthy of its life. Couldn't we do something more interesting with that? And that was it. That was the start of the business. And that's still my mentality now. I walk down back alleys, I look in bins. I'm obsessed with the underloved. I'm obsessed with what we throw away. I treat my own sewage because I think that's a resource as well. And so I'll take this to the nth degree. This is not a superficial just hose thing. This is everything we do and how we live. And I also, and there's just so much joy and love in it. And that's what I found in the firehouse. It's what I found from the London Fire Brigade. It's what I found from the firefighters charity that we work with, that if you do good things and you cherish things, love is all around. It kind of wraps you up and keeps you going. It sustains you.
And something you said earlier was, and it might have just been in a conversation after you came off stage, was that when you put good out there, you never lose.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like it's something you've given away and that you've now lost.
Yes.
And I thought that was such a beautiful sentiment.
People think everything's a zero-sum game. Like, I've got 20 things, and if I give away 10 things, I've only got 10 things. Love is not pie. Joy is not a pie. Like, the more you give away, the more pie you end up having.
Yeah.
We have never lost. That's when people say, oh, how do you give away 50% of your profits? Or how do you balance being a good or an ethical business? I'm like, how could anyone manage being in an unsustainable, unethical business? I can't even imagine what it would be like to work for a gambling company. Because if I knew that my industry was underpinned by so much devastation and despair and addiction, I don't think I could do it. Now, that being said, on the farm we're growing grapes and making wine, and it's definitely something that I'm going to need to address and get to the bottom of, because I think it must be very difficult to work in an industry that is morally bankrupt.
Yeah.
I think that would be harder. I think that'd be way harder.
Good wine and small production, I think that's okay. I think gambling's bad. Just to say, don't go too far into the wine.
It's really, these are difficult questions, and I think they're questions we should be asking ourselves all the time. I don't think we can ignore them and pretend that the world is going to get better. Yeah. I think we have to address things head on. Where do we have issues in society? Who is being left behind? Who needs to be included? Who is missing from big conversations? Why are we not talking about waste? It's of value. When I first came here, 100 million tons a year went to landfill. This is valuable, precious material that we've just decided not to value, that we could cherish and use as raw materials for whole new industries and sources of employment. I mean, come on, where is our creative brain?
I also think if we're going to get to the bottom of circularity, we have to start to solve waste. And it is something that, one of the things within the show that I'm quite passionate about is about bringing these companies who deal with waste into the show so they can connect with businesses and start having those conversations. There's at least one really big retailer that I know that their attitude of their head of sustainability is that they will pay to do the R&D to make these products that are just these projects that are just good, just fundamentally good projects. They'll get them to a level where they're commercially viable, and then they open source it. And I think that kind of collaboration is what we need. That's going to help move things forward. But that's one business, and that's the only business that I can think of on that scale that is thinking that way. Question for you.
You should introduce me to them, by the way. And I'm fascinated by who this is.
See it tomorrow. I'll tell you in a minute. He's great. And you would love him.
I'm definitely doing some R&D for them.
So, and I'll talk to you about that off. So I know we're a little bit short of time because I can talk. What's the one piece of advice you would give to somebody starting off, trying to create a business like yours, trying to create something good out of waste or something where it hasn't been done before?
I get this question all the time, and I think it's almost a backward question, because unless you are confronted with a problem that you feel you cannot walk away from, I wouldn't start a business. So I wouldn't sit down and go, I'm going to start a business now, I'm going to look for a problem. Find the problem first, fall in love with that problem, apprentice that problem, be obsessed by it, realize that you will do anything to solve it, be industry agnostic. There are problems out there, but my first piece of advice is go out into the world, be curious, and fall absolutely head over heels with a problem. I don't care what it is, they're everywhere. And it might be that not enough kids have food in this country. It might be a lack of healthcare in certain kind of communities. It might be fire hose. It might be something else. But find the problem first.
Yeah.
Because the business will almost design itself. If you love the problem enough, the business will design itself.
And last question to end on, ask everybody this, and it's not what's your favourite 80s song, because I can hear the soundtrack play. What excites you the most for the future of Elvis Kresse and the future of what you're doing?
I mean, it sounds very cheesy, but what always excites me is that I get to do this incredible work with Elvis. He is an extraordinary human being. He's funny, he's kind, he's extremely talented. And that's the fact that we get to do this work together is a real thrill, because I know a lot of people have someone they truly love in their life and they don't get to spend 24 hours a day with them 7 days a week, and I get that. So that's the thing that excites me most, because I never know where we're going to go. I just know we're going to go there together.
I love that. Kresse, thank you so much for your time. I've loved this conversation. And yeah, well done on the work and on the British Fashion Council win this year.
Thanks.
Most sustainable business.
Oh, it was Walpole.
Was it Walpole?
I haven't won anything. I haven't won anything from the British Fashion
Why
Council.
haven't they given you a prize yet?
I don't know.
There we go.
I don't know.
Thank you so much. Okay.